Now let's have this is like a hard shift now. Close that book, put it on the shelf, take a new book off called Church Finances, open it up. So, let me just kind of bring you back up to speed on where we are at. So, our church this year in particular we've passed a budget. Our budget we have consistently come in every month $3,500 beneath our budgeted income that we need. And just like if you had a family budget and every month you didn't get $3,500, eventually you run out of money. And so while we had a bit of a buffer, that loss of income was made more severe because for the last 3 years we have also received a grant from our district to help plant our church at the coffee shop. And that grant went away last month. And so we will feel the effects of that loss of income more significantly moving forward. But we had already kind of hit this moment like, whoa, we are at the bottom of the barrel. Now, if you've been a part of our church for any time, you know that we had a conversation similar to this about 2.5 years ago. And so the elders said, all right, this cannot be the normal for us. We can't keep having these conversations of we're almost out of money and then move forward. It's just exhausting. It's tough on our church staff to not know if they're going to have a job. It's just not a healthy way to run a church. And so on Monday, the elders and the pastors, we met to pray and to discuss our financial situation. We prayed for a good, 45 minutes, would you say, Jerry? It was a long time. And the question I posed to the elders was, guys, since this has happened, what's God trying to tell our church? Like, what is the thing that he's trying to speak to us through the pain? And so we prayed, we cried, we got mad at God. I told somebody I've cried this week for Tim. I've cried more this week than I have in the last 15 years. I think Jerry tells me that if I keep my tears in, it hurts my heart. So I guess I just start. So anyhow, so we prayed a lot. And we wanted to hear what Jesus was saying to the church. We took time to repent of sin. At the end of that hour, there was a genuine sense that, if nothing else, this was a meaningful time of prayer. I feel like Jesus was pleased with our approach to that. Maybe Jesus let us have a place of pain simply to get us on our knees, because we can be a stubborn people. I then took time to explain where we are currently, as well as the response we had received over the last 2 weeks to our initiative to challenge you to, if you've been coming to our church for a while, and this is your home, and you don't give, or you are willing to give more every month, would you indicate that for us so that we can make thoughtful and careful plans moving forward? And so Avery made this handy website for us. And there's actually another row at the bottom, and I couldn't get it on there. And these are boxes that you check, basically saying hey, this is how much I'm going to increase my monthly giving at Common Places. And I was so pleased, just filled with gratitude that in the last 2 weeks, you have indicated you would make up over 50% of that gap. So not $1,950 of the gap of $3,500 has been, you've pledged or you've promised that you will take steps in that. That looks like from some people becoming first-time givers, and some people who have been given forever making even deeper sacrifices. And so I'm really grateful for that. Our church is in a spending freeze. What that means is we pay our staff and we buy the essential things that we need to buy. To be honest, our church runs on such thin margins and has such a stripped down budget that a spending freeze doesn't really change that much because we don't spend much on non-essential things. But that has happened. So if you run a ministry area and you were planning on spending some non-essential money, you have to hold off on that right now. Spending freezes, though, cannot be permanent because it greatly limits ministry. So this is what the plan that the elders and the pastors came out with at the end of this time. We do not like this plan, just so you know, that we're going to share with you. And yet nothing else was emerged as a better plan. So plan number 8, part A to the plan. We are aiming for 75% coverage of that deficit by August. So that would mean that our monthly giving increases to $2,625. So we're already at 55%. We're asking another 20% of you to say we can contribute, and this month, and that's by that amount. If we do not reach that benchmark, we will vacate our second floor ministry space and office space at the coffee shop and rent it as a 3-bedroom apartment. We don't want to do that because that space is used often and frequently. Well, that's the same thing as often. But that would mean our church staff has no offices or storage any longer. That Avenue has no spillover seating. They broadcast church on Sunday in that space during the college semester when they run out of space downstairs. It means that college ministry will no longer have a space for Bible study in the coffee shop. Counseling that often happens in the privacy of our offices with people who are in crisis would need to find some new place. So if you see a lot of crying people at a table downstairs, that would be the reality. It's an unpleasant scenario, but it was the next step to try to generate some money so that we didn't have to lay off any staff or give or cut salaries. So that's the next goal. 75% by August, or else we rent the second floor of the apartment, or second floor of the coffee shop as an apartment. And then the second benchmark is simply that we need to cover 100% of that by December. In the meantime, we have given Rachel, our treasurer, permission to draw down on our building fund to cover the gap, because we had about $8,000 in our building fund. So in the interim, we can use that to cover essential purchases, but that's not, eventually that will be exhausted as well. And if we don't reach 100% funding by the end of the year, we will move forward with the merger of our 2 Lock Haven congregations and reduce our staff at that point. Whose position would be reduced or eliminated was not discussed. This was a scenario we didn't want to think about, but and where the merged church congregation would meet was not discussed. This does not impact Newberry. Newberry is well funded by their own donors and by grants for the next few years. They are in a healthy shape. All right, they're doing well. So we're talking about our Coffee Avenue congregation and our Piper congregation here. The reason why we said 100% is because unless we get to some level of systemic change, we will always be in this cycle of, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? And I just can't ask people, my staff, to live like that. I can't ask my own family to live like that in perpetuity. It would be better to suffer the loss of 2 congregations and have some financial stability than to move forward with this cycle of anxiety of not knowing if we can pay for our bills. Now, we also had a conversation, Mike, you can come on up, around, we realized, we're painfully aware, we are not a traditional church. One of the reasons why our church struggles financially is because the people that come to our church are often pre-Christians or not believers yet, and giving is so far down their journey of following Christ that it takes years for them to trust Jesus enough in that way. We meet in unconventional spaces. We do ministry a little bit differently than other churches would. And so a conversation was had around inviting you or opening up the possibility for other kinds of creative, I'm using these terms, creative, sustainable fundraising endeavors that would help close the gap on our budget. And if you want to take leadership on endeavors like that, talk to me or Mike. Mike, did you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure, I can throw some stuff in. I actually don't get nervous. It must be because it's talking about money, right? I can feel my heart flutter.
Politics and money today, baby.
So here's the deal. Please use me as a point person if you have a fundraising idea. So to be clear, fundraising has to be something that's sustainable, but fundraising doesn't change the problem of having a giving heart. Okay, so this is a stopgap solution to try to figure out how we can get some additional funds to help close the gap is what we're looking at. So as I look around the room, and I won't point any fingers, I'll put my hands in my pocket, I know there's lots of creative people in here. So I don't know what fundraisers look like, but I've had a couple crazy ideas. You know, the easy ones are things like a pancake breakfast. We have a lot of creative people in the room. We have people who are really good at baking. We have people who are really good at making bracelets. We have people who are gifted musicians. We have people with vast amounts of sound biblical knowledge, maybe for a church Kahoot trivia night. I mean, there's lots of things we can do here. We have people in the room who just, for fun, believe it or not, like to run a 5, 10, or 100K on a weekend, so I'm not going to even glance his way. So there's lots of things that we can do, but I think we need to have a, we need to get together, we need to talk about it. So we always linger here, so if you have ideas and you're like, oh, that's a fundraiser I've been dying to do for the last several years, talk to me after church at any point. Shoot me an email, give me a call. There's lots of people here that have my number if you don't, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. But again, it's kind of a stopgap solution right now. But there are things we can do. We can be creative, and I fully believe we can do fundraisers without a lot of extra overhead because we don't have that capacity. We can't front money to make money, so we need to be really creative here. And then I'll go off script just a little bit if it's okay. If
Go for it.
there's really no script anyway.
No.
I'll just,
I literally have a script.
he does have a script, I know. So he said it's okay. I just will say this quickly in regard to giving. I bared my heart to my brothers on Monday evening. And I will say that giving is obviously super important. We're seeing the impact of what can happen if we potentially either don't or limit ourselves in that area. I full disclosure, haven't given perhaps as much as I should in the past. So I know that I'm challenging myself in that area. Josh was chasing me down for the last several months about doing a financial spotlight, and I will tell you, I was avoiding the financial spotlight. I think, as you said, I ghosted you. I absolutely did. Absolutely ghosted him. But, so here's my financial spotlight is I have had challenges in my life that have created some issues, all of my own doing. I am since back on the correct track and challenging myself to give more. So if you don't give anything, give. If you give a few dollars, give more. If you give, challenge yourself. And I feel like I can say this because I'm not the pastor, so I hope this is okay. Challenge yourself to step up, and that's what I'm doing. And as a leader, it was hard for me to say that and just be like, this is an area where I need to grow. So when you think about like why are we here, like admittedly I could do better. So I'm challenging myself to do that. And again, just to be clear, we can't fund ourselves forever just on fundraising alone. So that's not the message we're here to say. We have to give, but we can fundraise to supplement. So if you have ideas, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. There's, I think, a link again in your bulletin that if you want to indicate that you're willing to increase your giving, that would be helpful. It gives us something to cheer for. I really feel, so this is the strange thing, all right? Our church has never been more on mission. We have never baptized more people into the kingdom of Jesus than we ever have in the last couple of years. Like, this idea of starting small, simple churches and places where people already meet is working on so many levels. Like, the idea that we develop lay preachers to step into the pulpit and have bivocational pastors. I don't doubt the thing we're doing. It's going well. Like, God's favor is on it, but we just can't pay for it. So, but Jesus can through His people. That is not that astronomical of an amount to make up. I believe in us. And while we prayed, this was the interesting thing. So we're praying, we're asking Jesus to tell us what to do, and there came out of that initial hour or so of praying, whatever it was, a sense that Jesus wanted us to pray for people's hearts to be changed, not even related to generosity, but just like a sense of revival. It's almost like the thing big on our minds was money. The thing big on Jesus' mind as we prayed and got a little more tapped into His heart was lost people and people's hearts that are far from Him, right? And so we leaned into that and we prayed that God would send a spirit of revival to our church as well. We really believe, I believe, that God has good things for His church. We walk into that future with open hands. I told the elders, this church belongs to Jesus Christ. He is Lord of the whole world, particularly commonplaces. And if God's will is that we should combine our congregations, then that is the Lord's will, and I trust Him. I don't want to do that, but I trust Jesus in the middle of that. And I don't think we have to do that either. So that's my talk there. That's my script. If you have questions for me, I would be more than happy to answer them. Again, thanks for your patience with us. It was a very unusual Sunday. And now we're going to have communion. So I've asked Jerry if he would lead us in our communion time. I imagine the worship team would come back up at this point. And why have communion on the heels of a conversation about politics and money? Well, it's the first Sunday of the month. That's when we have communion, right? But maybe in the providence of God, he wanted to remind us of his presence in the body and blood of Jesus when we are inclined to be thinking about other things. And that's really the centerpiece of it. So, anyway, I did not arrange for anybody to... Wes, you and I will hand out communion. All right.
So communion. Yeah, communion's, it's a beautiful thing. It shows us